The handshoe suit was filed after the acquittal of the Panther 21 in 1971. And it was clear from the Panther 21 trial that the New York City Police Department, and specifically its intelligence unit, the Bureau of Special Services, had conducted surveillance, break-ins, and pretext arrests of activists across the city, and particularly the Black Panther Party. And so a suit was filed. I was one of the original plaintiffs in the suit, but I was in prison. I was captured in 1971 on June 5th, and I was in prison. And the suit was filed, and it went through the courts, through the discovery phase of the courts. And the NYPD maintained that they didn't have any files, that basically they kept all the information on index cards. And they cross-referenced on index cards. They had no real files to release. And the lawyers at that time, who were well-intentioned lawyers, they agreed to settle with the New York City Police Department on the basis that they would destroy their records, that they would no longer maintain the types of surveillances that they did. And so they wanted to sign this agreement saying that.
And this is just for clarification, Dhoruba, this was signed, I think, as I'm seeing here, in 1985 at the end of a long, I guess, court back and forth, and it was known as the Handshoe Decree, named after Barbara Ellen Handshoe, the lawyer and political activist who was in whose name this was being done. Is that correct?
Yes, it languished in the court for several years, and we got the initial discovery. But there was no big deal about the discovery that we had. We had gotten discovery on the surveillance of the Black Panther Party, on the surveillance of the Panther 21 Defense Committee, and we got all of these files. But there was no hue and cry about that. So when the Handshoe settlement was about to be, it was declared a class action. And testimony was opened up to anyone that opposed the settlement. I was upstate in, I believe I was in Comstock or Clinton Prison. And I wrote a long piece about how I opposed the settlement of the Handshoe case because there were political prisoners in prison, that the church committee that had conducted hearings on the counterintelligence program did not stop their hearings, stop the revelations in their hearings, short of revealing the FBI's involvement with local law enforcement. And I had believed at that time, and it subsequently proved to be true, that the FBI has orchestrated much of the intelligence and police investigations on the local levels across the country, with the local police departments. They collaborated with the local police department, local prosecutors, in order to bring convictions and charges against black activists. To the Black Panther Party, on the surveillance of the Panther 21 Defense Committee, and we got all of these files. But there was no hue and cry about that. So when the Handshoe settlement was about to be, it was declared a class action, and testimony was opened up to anyone that opposed the settlement. I was upstate in, I believe I was in Comstock or Clinton Prison, and I wrote a long piece about how I opposed the settlement of the Handshoe case because there were political prisoners in prison, that the church committee that had conducted hearings on the counterintelligence program did not stop their hearings, stop the revelations in their hearings, short of revealing the FBI's involvement with local law enforcement. And I had believed at that time, and it subsequently proved to be true, that the FBI has orchestrated much of the intelligence and police investigations on the local levels across the country, with the local police departments. They collaborated with the local police department, local prosecutors, in order to bring convictions and charges against black activists. So I opposed the settlement. And I was brought down to court to testify in opposition to the settlement. And I testified, and the settlement went through anyway.
And you were the only one. You were the only one to stand against the settlement, right?
Yes, I was the only one to stand against it. And because I maintained then, as it's been proven now, that the Bureau of Special Services and the New York City Police Department did not release their files, did not release all of their files. They were less than forthcoming, and that they lied to the court. And of course, by 1985, the attorneys were tired with the case. It was no longer a popular case, and people had moved on. And so they agreed to a settlement. Now, after 9/11, the settlement, the conditions of the settlement with the NYPD was suspended in the wake of 9/11 under the Patriot Act. And so the police went back to business as usual. And it was as a result of current litigations, I believe, that grew out of the revelations a few years ago of the NYPD surveillance of masjids in New York, and their surveillance of Muslim communities, and hiring and suborning perjurous spies to go into the Muslim community. That this was reopened. The NYPD's involvement in surveillance was again addressed, and of course, people in this case, Johanna and the folks dealing with Young Lords and Mumia Abu Jamal's case also filed for discovery in these matters. So that's how it got resurrected, so to speak. But the information that was turned over was already turned over to us in the 1980s. But additional files the police claimed to have found on the Young Lords party that they said was laying around in a warehouse somewhere, and they just happened to stumble across them.
Well, first, apparently, they told Fernandez that they were lost, and then that they were found, and right.
They said they were found in some storeroom that they hadn't previously looked in. They gave a whole song and dance as to why they had come up with the files now. And of course, Johanna and her co-consul, they immediately went public with this, and to show that there was a bad faith. There was bad faith, a representation to the courts in regards to their files, and that further discovery should take place. And so that's basically the history of the handshoe case. But let me point out that in no time did the local law enforcement, the New York City Police Department, suspend their investigations and surveillance of the left in New York. We know from CISPES, I believe, the committee to support the Sandinistas and the struggle in Central America, that the NYPD was heavily involved in surveillance of anti-war activists and those who were opposed to U.S. policies in Central America. And this was in the 90s. This was before 9/11. And so the NYPD has only lowered its profile, but maintained its complete surveillance of radicals and anti-war and anti-racist forces in New York. And again, I think that with the rise of the Occupy Wall Street movement, it's been seen that NYPD conducted significant surveillance of that movement, and indeed were accused of being hired out by Wall Street to provide information to the media regarding the Occupy Wall Street movement early in its development.